And I'm going to record. All right. I think all the ducks are now lined up. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine with my regular co-host and good friend, Brian McNicoll.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yes, I love it. I love the way you read that. So anyway, I will say on a technical note, I am very pleased to see that Zoom and Facebook seem to now have fixed whatever the issue was, which I blame mostly on Facebook for their change and forcing us to their new look. But I will say that just having done a little prep here in the last couple of minutes, that this show is now being broadcast to my secondary Facebook page as well as to our Accuracy in Academia page. So there's some pluses there. You should get, I won't have to do quite as much work post-show. So with all of that said, we are now down to 20 days before the election. But what is dominating, the news right now, and it's going on as we speak. So some of you out there may actually be watching the Amy Coney Barrett hearings rather than watching this, and you can catch up with us later. But I think it'll be good to get our take on this. So we're on day 3 now, Brian, with this, and I want you to kind of lay out, give me your opinion in terms of what's going on, how you feel this is going so far.
Well, they are trying to play politics with this. The Democrats are. They know that the process doesn't favor them, that she will be voted out of committee and that she will be confirmed on the floor. And there's not a whole lot they can do about it. So what they're trying to do is get her dirtied up on things like, will you overturn the Affordable Care Act? And they have all these pictures of people that they put up and tell their sob stories and so forth and everything. First of all, I am all for a repudiation of government by sob story. If that loses in this election, I will be a happy man, because we do too much of, governing by, so somebody has a sob story over here, so we have to change, hundreds of years of precedent, do completely stupid things to accommodate their sob story. So, that's one of the things that's going by the board here. I think that Republicans, they're fretting about this line of questioning, but you got to remember, more than 1,000, in fact, more than 1,100 people, elected Democrats, lost their positions in government over Obamacare. It's not popular. If you look on the internet, when people start talking about it, they're like, yeah, my premiums tripled or quadrupled or quintupled. I'm not understanding why we care if they take down Obamacare. Right. So, you're not going to move a whole lot of votes for this, but it's kind of all they got. And then you have, this, you go to the sublime to the ridiculous. You had Sheldon Whitehouse with his hop thing. Did you hear any of this yesterday?
No, I heard about the dark money issue.
Yeah. It was part of that. He was explaining how, there were very few hops between this alleged dark money and John Cornyn. And that's why John Cornyn is there. A Republican senator on his way to a 30-point win in Texas this year, is backing a Republican nominated conservative woman for the Supreme Court is because of, hops and dark money. It's like, no, that's not correct. Mazie Hirono asked, and this is something, I need to check this out, because Mazie Hirono asked her last night if she had ever been accused of sexual assault. I know guys all over America going, so there better be pictures. Did I say that out loud? And
where's that button?
Asked her if she had, she said she asked all judges that. So I want to know, is that true? Is every justice, every person who comes before that committee to, be approved for federal judgeship, does she ask them, it's a simple question. Do you always ask people this? Is it in the record that she's asked, the last 10 people who came up there, or did she just pull this question out for Amy Coney Barrett with her 7 kids sitting behind her? Because it's kind of gone from the sublime to the ridiculous on their side.
Yeah, no, I mean, this has just been, it started off, on Monday, with, like Amy Klobuchar, it's like, this is your country. This is not Trump's country. You know, you talk about the pictures. You're absolutely right there, though. Both sides are guilty of kind of the whole sob story issue. I mean, everybody this is a typical political play, you know, by both sides. But of course, in this case, you know, as you said, you know, the Democrats can't stop this, and they don't know how.
And they spent the whole first day trying to litigate whether it was proper for a sitting president to appoint a justice to appoint a judge to fulfill a Supreme Court vacancy, right? Obama did that when it was, you know, in the same situation. Obama appointed Merrick Garland. Your argument is not with Trump. Your argument is with the Senate, right?
Right. And look, and the Senate is doing their job. I mean, you know, it's interesting to watch, you know, all of this. I mean, I think, you know, I had last week, but we didn't talk about it on the list, you know, of Kamala Harris during the vice presidential debate, talking about the Supreme Court, right? And talking about Abraham Lincoln, and that he postponed the vote for, you know, his nominee at the time after Roger Taney had passed away. But many have pointed out that it wasn't clear as to why Lincoln did that. It wasn't.
Well, the Senate wasn't in session.
Yeah, but it wasn't that he was waiting for the next president or after the election. There were other issues, like you said, right, like that, and some other. But historians have said, you know, this is not the same issue. But the Democrats are trying to make it like the same type of issue.
They don't care when you catch them in a lie. That doesn't make them stop telling the lie. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's like the Very Fine People hoax, right? You know, Biden said he got into the presidential campaign after he heard that. Okay, you got in on a hoax, and it's a proven hoax. And even the people who hate Trump, the Washington Post fact checker, PolitiFact, the liberalist fact checkers in America admit Trump is right on this. He specifically excluded from his Very Fine People remark all racist of any form, right? He went on and on about this does not mean them. This means the other people, the preservationists versus the, you know, other side or whatever. So, you know, they don't care about living with lies. The other thing she did, you know, so Harris will, you know, she'll do these things where she's talking and then she'll pause. She'll say something, you know, we were talking about this the other day, and, you know, and then when you jump in and say, you mean such and such, I'm speaking. Like, no, you really weren't speaking. You really paused in a way to invite me to say something so that you could say you're speaking. You know, that's like a fourth grader thing, which that's the level of maturity of the people that we're dealing with here.
Didn't she do that last night?
Yeah, she pulled that last night.
She pulled, you know, and it's just, and so you know, this is that her version? Is that can we call that mansplaining? I mean, they accused Pence of mansplaining. I mean, you know, isn't this a similar type of a thing for her?
It's just it's a like bald backroom intimidation tactic, and it's you know, it's juvenile, but I mean, that's where we are.
Yeah, you know, as I've been watching parts of the hearing, and I mean, it's way too long for me to sit there and watch all of it. I've got way too much on my plate to sit there and watch it all. But I am, you know, I'm extremely interested on this because, you know, you've got a very solid, you know, religious woman, a Catholic, you know, a mother of seven, two of them she brought, you know, she adopted, they're Haitian. I mean, you know, enormous things that she has done. You know, I mean, I think there is a little bit of jealous rage by people who can't balance all that Judge Barrett, you know, has been able to do as a mom and as when she was teaching law at Notre Dame, and now as a judge on the Seventh Circuit, and all of these things that are going on here that are happening with all of this, that she has laid out, you know, a great career. She's been very solid. I saw some tweet this morning from someone who said, well, you know, she's really green. She's only been a judge for 2 years. Well, she's what, like 48 years old? You know, she's accomplished a lot, you know, for someone who's age 48 at this point in time. You know, their attacks really don't stick. But you listen to these Democrats. You mentioned Sheldon Whitehouse. I was watching Dick Durbin, you know, and they're going on all these long things. They talk about guns and violence and all of these things. And it should hit home for Durbin because of Chicago, and they have, pretty much record, murder rate going on right now. I mean, this whole thing that's going on is crazy. And then, but he's trying to tie it to those in Indiana and other places that are, that are lax, that are allowing these things to come across their borders. Like, well, part of the problem, Dick Durbin, is that you've got a mayor in Chicago who is feckless. She doesn't do anything. I mean, she won't do anything at all, to try to fight back and
that's
control.
Another she's like Harris. She's in an important position, and she's a completely unserious person. This is a clown show to her, and she doesn't understand why people care.
Yeah, and when you mention Hirano, I mean, that had to be one of the most ludicrous, outrageous things I've ever heard. There is nothing
topped though by Cory Booker asking her if she denounces white supremacy.
Yeah, this is. I mean, where has been, there's no criticism of her bona fides, right? I mean, she has, her resume, her intellect, all of the things like that. They're not touching that because they can't. So they're trying to nail her on these policy positions and all of these things and say, what would you do about Obamacare? What would you do about abortion? I mean, will
you recuse on this and that?
Recuse on the election issue should it come to, but she's been very smart. I mean, the media, for the most part, it seems, a lot of the initial reports that I was seeing were kind of like how she's dodged these questions. No, I mean,
she answered them. She cannot tell you how she's going to rule on cases. And as she pointed out last night, everybody who sits in this chair has to give that answer.
Right. And
not just her.
She's brought up Ginsburg, and I think she brought up Kagan in terms of things that they said before. It's like, all right, to me, it's like, this is wonderful. She is throwing back at them their own justices, their own liberal justices, and what they said and how they handle things, and and they're just struggling, to try to find things. But when you talk about, was it Feinstein that was talking about guns? I mean, and then she asked, then she went. I think she was talking about Cantor versus Barr, and then she went on to say, and how does this affect like your decisions on Roe? And I'm sitting there trying to think, oh, a minute. So we were talking about an issue that dealt around gun ownership, and this person who had committed a felony for defrauding Medicare and all this stuff with his sole shoe insert, to Roe. I was trying to figure out, where is the leap? How did she make that leap? Where is the connection with that? But this is, Judge Barrett, Amy Coney Barrett, has been incredibly cool and calm, and just very well managed, and just answered these questions dead on. And how many more times does she have to tell them? This case may come before me, or what? She's laying it out and said, I can't answer the question because it may come before the court, or it is before the court now.
Yeah,
and they don't listen.
If you're a leftist, I think that considering what was possible here, you kind of have to be satisfied with her answers on Roe. She's saying that, I'm not strolling in the room and declaring Roe invalid. Somebody's going to have to come up, and we've talked about this before, with a legal theory that knocks it out, right? And if someone does, then I think she won't be the only one looking closely at it. The whole country will know, okay, someone's come up with something. Let's see if this one works, right? To overturn Roe, which would not make it illegal, by the way. Like New York has already written into its state constitution that if Roe goes away, it will, abortion will remain legal in New York. Louisiana has already written into its state constitution that, or I think it's statute, I don't think it's in the constitution, that if Roe goes away, abortion will go away in Louisiana. I think they're down to 2 clinics anyway, so it won't be a big deal. And the clinics are in places, they're near state borders. One of them is in Shreveport, which is 8 miles from Texas. And one of which, I don't know if you recall, it was a couple of years ago, small towns on the Texas side, such as Wascom and Joaquin and other ones that are right just across from Shreveport, outlawed abortion. You're like, oh, they're a tiny town. Why are you outlawing abortion? And it was in case, Louisiana throws out the one in Shreveport. So, You know, she's telling you, you know, unless somebody comes up with a legal argument that none of us have heard yet, then she can't overdo it. She can't overturn it. So, you know, to me, you know, you're going to get a conservative. You're going to get, you know, a Federal Society approved person, you know, clerk for someone conservative, in her case, Scalia. You know, you had no choice. That was what you were going to get. But you do have one that's acknowledging the humility of the judiciary in terms of, you know, I think Ben Sass had some good remarks about this, talking about the people we elect should be making these decisions, right? For the most part, if they don't run afoul of the Constitution, you know, I want people, elected people, my side or the other side, making the calls, because if they don't make the calls correctly, we have recourse. We can throw them out and put somebody else in who will get it right. Whereas if it's done by bureaucrats or courts or people that we can't defeat in the next election, then, you know, that's injustice, right? As long as it's held by the people who won the elections, then, you know, that's good.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know if you saw this, I guess there was a release of a letter signed by something like 88 of her colleagues at Notre Dame, telling her to step down, not to, you know, to basically step away from this. And if you
look at the letter,
the letter was not about her qualifications.
Right, the letter's like, oh, we're so happy and the Domer's up there, and you know, you're qualified and excited for you, but you should turn this down over, you know, they shouldn't be holding the vote now.
Right. You should wait till after the election, you know, but it means that you probably will lose your seat if you do so. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You know,
and you know, I think that Trump muted that argument once and for all during the debate when he said, if the Democrats were in this situation, there is no question that they would be filling the seat. Right. And there's not.
Right. No, I think that's true. And you have, you know, these things here. I mean, she has been very good. I mean, the other thing about it too is that, you know, when questioned about her, you know, about Scalia, you know, and things like this, you know, she says, look, yeah, you know, but I'm an independent, you know, we don't all think alike, you know, which is true. I mean, we don't really know exactly how she will vote, you know, when the cases come before her, because she is going to judge those cases on their own merits and make those decisions. It's clear to me that she, you know, spends a lot of time, you know, reviewing these cases that have come before her on the court she's on now, and making the decisions and going back through a lot of history. So she's not making any snap decisions by any stretch of imagination. So she may not vote exactly like Scalia would have voted on everything.
Right.
And I just wouldn't expect her. I really wouldn't want her to be in lockstep like that. She does need to have, you know, kind of chart her own path.
But she has explained that, you know, she takes an originalist view of the Constitution. The job of the judge is to interpret what the founders meant when they wrote those words. And there's nothing, you know, it says what it says and it doesn't say what it doesn't say. And, you know, she explained the three approaches, you know, and the scholarship and who's on what side. And she said that, I think it probably surprised a lot of people, that there are a lot of people on the left who are originalists. You know, what they get out, you know, of what was meant by the founders may be different from what a you or a me would, but that there are legal scholars on the left. And I know, you know, Amir, what is his name? The guy at Yale. He's definitely one of them, definitely an originalist, and one of the smartest people in the country on law. And, you know, he's definitely liberal, right? And, you know, he and I can remember when I was at Heritage, he came and he would talk to Meese, Ed Meese, the former Attorney General, counsel of the president, or President Reagan, about originalism and how it produced these different outcomes, you know, and they had a real good collegial relationship and so forth. So, you know, we are getting, which we really didn't get with Kavanaugh, is kind of a education for a lot of people on, you know, what does originalism mean? What does a living constitution mean? You know, how do people view this? And I thought when she presented those views, she did it in a way that, like, she's on one of the sides. There's no question about it. But, she treated all the, as she was telling you what the other views were, she presented that in a fair manner, in a manner that you could understand and recognize if you are an adherent of one of those things, right? She didn't trash it. I'm on the good one, they're on the bad one. She said, here's what the three are.
Yeah. I'm trying to look this up. Are you referring to this Akhil Reed Amar?
Yeah, Akhil
Okay.
Reed, yeah, Akhil Amar, that's his name.
Okay. So anyway, the other thing too about this idea that you have to wait till after the election and all this kind of stuff is just that the thing is that the people already they voted for this Senate, they voted for this president. So why doesn't he have the right to go ahead and appoint a Supreme Court justice? And
Right.
Why doesn't the Senate have the option, go ahead and hold the hearings and confirm? This is not wait, they're the ones that are in control. They are legally elected. There's nothing illegal or unconstitutional about what they're doing right now, no matter what the Democrats try to say.
And it's not court packing. Court packing is adding positions to the court. We're not adding, we're filling.
All right, so that was the segue I think we want to make into court packing, because it seems to be another topic that is that's associated with this. The media seems to be a little more interested now to try to nail down. I'm talking about the liberal media. The conservative media has always been on them, but the liberal media seems to be a little more interested in trying to get Joe Biden to come up with a concise answer on court packing, and they can't seem to get Kamala Harris to do it either. Jake Tapper's exchange with Katie Bedingfield on Sunday was very instructive.
Who's
because
his press person, one of his press people.
Yeah, and so
they have not distinguished themselves. Her and the guy was Jonko or whatever his name was.
Ducklow or whatever.
Ducklow.
TJ Ducklow or whatever.
It's like keep those press people away from the press.
Yeah, well, I mean, even Ducklow, I mean, he got into it with the guy from MSNBC who just, he wanted an answer. I mean, when the more liberal parts of the press want to get an answer for this, and all they're just dodging this question left and right.
What they say though, think about the language they use. They say, I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into they want me to answer that question. Yeah, we want you to answer that question because, the voters need to know. It's like they're just trying to trick us into telling you what we'll do if we get elected. It's like, that's the whole point of campaigns, is to figure out what you would do if you were elected, right? And so, what you point out, what your bosses point out, that's the whole thing that we're doing here, right? So, I don't know, I don't understand that, how they get away with that. And, of course, I guess Biden has caught himself. He didn't finish the sentence, but he was asked, don't the voters deserve to know? And he said, no, they don't, and it's like,
they can find out when I'm elected. Right?
You're going to upend one of the three branches of government. You're going to change the number from 9 to whatever it takes for you to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. That's never been done. And you're going to say, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. And, it's none of your business. And, I mean, those aren't acceptable answers. And, at some point, I think one of the things that's happening now is even the leftist media is starting to realize that, for up until the last couple of weeks, this has basically been a referendum on Trump, right? And specifically how Trump did on coronavirus response, right? And, they say 200,000 dead, it's a tragedy. He totally messed this up. It's like, okay, 2.5 million were projected. So you're at about 8% of projection. Now, if you came up and you said, okay, 4 million have died, Trump, and we predicted 2.5 million, how do you explain these failures, right? Okay, that's a fair question. But if it's 8% of what you projected, then how do you call it a total failure? I mean, as Trump always points out, one life is too many and so forth. But, we had a disease we knew nothing about, and we kept it to 8% of what we thought the damage was going to be, and Trump he's finally starting to explain these points in ways that you kind of can't deny, and the people who haven't already voted, are starting to think about it. And the media is starting to say, aside from Trump and his 200,000 and whether that's good or bad or indifferent, what would a Biden presidency look like? What do these guys propose to do? There's this, they have the what do they call the manifesto with him and Bernie that him and Bernie agreed on, which is basically Green New Deal, Medicare for all, all the liberal wish list. And it's like, they act like Biden has just separated himself from that. It's like, Biden says he's the Democrat Party now. Well, he's promised all these people this is what he's going to do. This is what he's committed to doing. And if he gets elected, this is what he intends to do. So I think you do have to take what's in that manifesto seriously. And, it's time to start asking him, how do you pay for all this? What benefits, what do you get out of it that we're not getting now? We're leading the world in emissions reductions. We're not in the Paris climate accords anymore, but we're still by far doing the best job of reducing emissions. So, how does it help us to go back in and agree to pay other countries for emissions reductions that they're not even doing? So, I don't know. I think scrutiny is starting to catch up to Joe in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. And on emissions and things like that, to an extent, I mean, COVID kind of helped reduce the emissions because of the change in how we lived our lives. People weren't traveling to work and doing all those things; they were staying at home. So there was a kind of a natural effect from that as well, and kind of took the environmentalists down a little bit, back on that for whatever purpose.
But we were exceeding our goals before COVID,
right?
So it's somewhat COVID.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's factors in there, and we were already making great strides, and corporations and things like that continue to work its way through. I mean, even Apple, is like an example of this. I mean, they had their big event that was delayed because of COVID and things like that to announce their new iPhone 12. And it had long been rumored that this was going to happen, and they announced it yesterday. So when these phones come out, the phones will not have a little charging brick, nor will they have the little air headphones that they normally have. They have supplied pretty much since day one, and they couch that in the terms of this. This is going to reduce packaging size. It's going to be, it'll reduce emissions and things like that. I'm a little bit more pessimistic, and I say this is a way of you cheapening out by, it's a few dollars worth of product for you that you've now just removed from your packaging, which means everybody's now going to have to buy something if they don't have one. If it's their first iPhone, they will actually buy what they need to go do that. So it will cost them more. Or they could buy something from the overpriced Apple store if they happen to do that, and that would make Apple very happy. But these are all things that are happening down the line. Yeah, I mean, I wish there had been more holding Biden's feet to the fire earlier, but he's definitely struggling, with some of these things as it comes up, as trying to do this. So where, if you started getting the liberal media getting a little exasperated with how they're reacting, then you begin to wonder, about if it's a crack that's forming within, the Biden-Harris team on how they're going to do this. I think I saw some headline somewhere today saying that, the Biden strategy is run out the clock.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to get to run out the clock.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got, there's so many things going on here, and on this court packing thing, to have Biden, I think I really liked what Jake Tapper did, because he played for Bedingfield clips of Biden, going back 30 years, and then a little more recently, of where Biden said, I think it was on the commenting about FDR's notions. He says that was boneheaded, kind of thing. And then talk about that, hey, look, Republicans do this, whoever's in control, Democrats have had justices, if we go down this path, we're no better than they are, for doing this. So, he's on record in the past of opposing this. He just can't, now he can't come out and say this for whatever, and the best thing is was like, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah. Like, what does that mean, Joe? I mean,
yeah. What exactly?
The other thing is he's got a couple of other problems that are looming. I don't know if you saw the New York Post had a story this morning. They have a laptop that had belonged to Hunter Biden,
right?
That appears to have him, getting favors from or granting favors to the government of Ukraine on, in exchange for the money he was getting from them, and Joe knowing about it, and Joe being in on these communications, and it definitely contradicts Joe's claim that he had no idea his son was on this board or what he was doing there. He's intimately involved. He can't deny it. Smoking gun type of evidence cannot be denied. Also, there's talk out there that we're about to see, if this is true, this is a game changer. I don't know if you heard about this, but supposedly, the Iranians, we were dealing with the Iranians back during the Obama administration, and they said, we put Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, and here's where you could find him if you wanted to avenge anything that might have happened over there. And so they go to do take him out, and the Iranians had changed their mind, and they had withdrawn Osama, and they had put a body double in his place, and we killed the body double, which explains why, the burial at sea and so forth. And then to cover it up, because the SEAL Team 6 people, realized that something funky happened, right? And they were part of something that didn't seem to be what it was. Wasn't what it seemed to be. That is why Biden was the one responsible for this, gave up their identifiers, which allowed them to be killed. Okay, so the accusation is Biden that Osama bin Laden is still alive and living in Iran, which kind of explains some stuff too, because you remember when that happened, there was all these warnings that the world was going to erupt and we were going to get punished again and this and that, and none of that ever happened, right? And it could be because the people who needed to know knew he was alive and didn't, and there's nothing to be mad about. But if Iran has him and they blackmailed, according to this plot, right, this whole thing, they blackmailed Obama. That's why we sent him all the the $1.5 billion was a blackmail payment to keep this from coming out. So if that's true, and it's Epic Times ran a story on it today, and it's starting to come off the dark edges of the internet into the mainstream information channels, that's it's probably the end of Biden, let alone whoever else, because this would be a kind of prosecution, if it's true and if they have the evidence that that would go beyond the DOJ's thing on not bringing up scandal within 60 days of an election. If you found out they did this, I think the whole country would understand if you take action now. So it'll be interesting to see. My sources tell me that you'll see official action on this after Barrett is confirmed. So that's probably next week. Can't wait much longer because people are voting like crazy. And if you're going to change votes with something, you better get it out now, because all over the country, there's long lines of people trying to vote in advance of the election.
Yeah, no, and I think the numbers are just going to be pretty astronomical in terms of number of votes that will have been cast either in person by early voting or by mail before November 3rd. So yeah, that's one thing, is that to sway anybody who hasn't voted yet, you've got to do it ASAP, because every day more and more people have voted, and then those votes will be locked in. I want to talk a little bit about the stimulus that's been just going on back and forth, another round back and forth for months now, and I guess McConnell wants to have another procedural vote on this. Pelosi has been standing pretty firm that she wants her 2.2 trillion. Trump initially had I liked what he did initially, which was basically say, let's give some relief to the airlines, let's give some directed thing. But he was not in favor of all this extra stuff for states or local government, these other bailouts that were going along there. He seems to have changed his mind and has authorized up to maybe 1.8 trillion, which is pretty darn close. That's about the closest they've come so far. And Pelosi, she wants it all. She thinks that she's in a position of strength, that she can still paint the Republicans as evil and bad and heartless if she stands. Of course, but she had a big blow up with Wolf Blitzer of all
Right.
people. I mean, Blitzer was he was trying to figure this out as to why, if they're that close, why is she not negotiating? Why is she standing firm? To the point that she called him an apologist for the Republican Party. I don't think Wolf Blitzer, that's the last thing Wolf Blitzer ever expected to be called.
Yep. And most of that exchange, he's just trying to get off the air. He's like, well, it was nice having you. Well, and she keeps going. She just keeps attacking him as, and you can feel though that the tide's turning against her. And I think she knows that if you've lost Wolf Blitzer, you've lost, right? And there are other Democrats coming out saying, Trump is for putting checks in people's hands, and we're not right now. And it's over things that we don't really see the value in preserving. So, you got to explain or you got to get off the field. And I think that's, part of what's going on here. I think she's in trouble. I think she realizes, she won't be speaker anymore after this year. And, this is her final stand, her final chance to, do something to Trump, because all the other stuff she did backfired horrifically.
All right. So I just want you to clarify. You're saying she's not going to be speaker because the Democrats will not reelect her as speaker, not because the Republicans are likely to take over the House.
Looks like the Republicans have about a 14 seat edge about where the polling is right now. So I'm thinking the Republicans will be in control of the House and the Senate.
Okay, well, if the House
flips Senate thing is it's getting unbelievable. Durbin is behind. Cory Booker is behind. Mark Warner is buying ads in the DC market for what, right? Something's going on out there, and these guys they're not reading the Washington Post ABC poll that says they're 40 points ahead. They know better. So you're starting to see some panicked action taking place out in the heartland.
Now, that's interesting too, because I mean that, I guess your part of your point here is that you need to look to see what the candidates are doing and how they're spending their money and how they're acting, and not really look at the polls. If the polls may say one thing, but if the candidates like that are supposed to be so far ahead are buying ads and spending money, then right. They're seeing something locally or elsewhere. Their internal polling is saying something completely different.
Right. So I'll give you an example of that is, there's stories yesterday, the day before, that Trump is pulling out his money from Ohio, Iowa, and Michigan. And he is sending it to Arizona, New Mexico, and Oregon. Now ask yourself, why is Trump spending money in Arizona, or not Arizona necessarily, but New Mexico and Oregon, that he could be spending in Iowa or Ohio, right? Why would he do that? Well, he must think Iowa and Ohio are in the bank, and New Mexico and Oregon are gettable. And sure enough, the polling that I'm looking at, he is up a point in Oregon now. The last one I saw yesterday, he was up a point in Oregon, and he's only down 1 point in New Mexico. And those are both, of course, within margin of error. But, if he is looking at playing in Oregon, it's only 7 electoral votes. But, you're talking about a landslide, right? If Trump is actually thinking that he has a chance in Oregon, that would be part of a 35 or 40 state landslide, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no one thought Oregon. I can tell you, New Year's Day 2020, nobody thought Oregon was going to go for Trump.
Right.
And Merkley is behind. The senator out there is behind in his reelect to a Republican. So it's tilting. It's starting to tilt.
And it's interesting because what I'm seeing, here and there, for people who are now putting out their electoral maps, is that it seems to be that I'm seeing more a landslide in one direction or another, not necessarily a lot of the ones where it's going to be relatively close electorally. Right. So we'll obviously not find out until after November 3rd or thereafter as to which of these winds up being accurate at this point. But it does, it's interesting. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I mean, why is Trump spending? Why would Trump spend any money in states that are very liberal, unless there's something else going on, unless they have a belief that they actually have a shot there, they're going to turn that around.
Right. 'Cause last time they were like, what is that idiot doing spending money in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, right? And
Yeah.
it's because he knew stuff that they didn't know. It's also why he made it, he didn't get there in Virginia, but he made a late push. And he may try that again, although I haven't seen it come up on his rally schedule yet. I know he's interested in Virginia and considers it flippable, and it is flippable. People look at it as this deep blue. It's not Maryland. It's a state that recently has gone over to the Democrat side, in part because Republicans put up some really bad candidates, such as Corey Stewart last year and so forth. That you cannot, you're not going to get a state to vote, a modern state to vote for, right? But Virginia is, it's more military than any other state in the country. And if Trump is really at, he got 4% of the black vote in 2016 in Virginia. If he's getting 10-12% this year, which is, according to the national polls, that would not at all be unreasonable, that he probably wins Virginia. So there's some upsets out there to be had.
Yeah, well, it'll be very interesting to see how this goes. I want to just briefly, we were supposed to have a debate this week. We're not going to have a debate this week, but we will have competing town halls, which is interesting. So Joe Biden and President Trump will be having separate town halls on separate networks, basically at the same time. I mean, who you going to watch? Which is going to be more interesting? Which is going to draw the bigger ratings? I think NBC's got the coup here.
Well, I think they were smart to do it. I guess you saw like some of the live media, like Jeffrey Greenfield, the guy who wrote the Atlantic story, the losers and suckers story, which has not panned out, saying how dare NBC to schedule a Trump town hall opposite Biden's. It's like, that's unacceptable. Like, why? Put on whatever they want. And it's and I think you're right. I think they're saying, if Biden's on that channel, what can we do to get, as many or more viewers than Biden has that night? And that's it. And in true confessions, I will probably be part of the Biden watchers because I want to see what he says.
Right. I mean, I think actually, if for conservatives, Republicans had to choose between the two, I think a lot of them are going to be watching Biden to see what he says and how it does, and also to see whether or not this one is going to be done by what, ABC, I think.
Yeah.
Is that right?
This is ABC.
So that whether or not ABC follows the pattern that CNN and NBC have held, which is that they've been softballs.
Right. That's the other thing. It's like
the Trump town hall that he had before was not a softball town hall.
It was all Biden voters, as well as the Biden town hall was all Biden voters. And they always said, these are uncommitted people. Why are you so wonderful? It's like, they weren't uncommitted, buddy. But, I think that if I'm ABC, I get some tough questions in there because, I don't want my news operation to take that criticism, right?
Right.
It'll be open for all the world to see.
Yeah, I certainly don't expect NBC to go soft on Trump. Trump just needs to be, prepared for the things. And speaking about debates,
that's a good point. Before,
yeah,
he needs to. The speaking opportunities, especially the ones that are like adversarial situations, between now and election day, Trump needs to nail down some specifics. He talks in general terms, and we talked about this before. He talks like we all stay up. Everybody he's talking to is, on their Twitter, ticking all night like he is. And like a lot of people dip in and out of this stuff and are not, the battle, the day by day scraps that go on in Washington. They're not that in tune to it. So he starts talking about things and they don't know what he's talking about. But what he needs to do is be very specific. Could have been, the projection was 2.5 million. We lost 200,000. That's pretty good. The basic issues of the day, the reason that we want rid of Obamacare is here's a better idea. We have lowered drug prices, like really get into the specifics of this. No generalities, straightforward language people can understand, and stay disciplined, stay on tack. I haven't offered him much advice, but I think that I believe here, as we sit here 20 days out, that there is a lot of things that argue for Trump that don't come out, because the media is not going to tell you. And when he gets his moments to tell you, it doesn't happen. So it needs to happen.
Right, and that's what the American people want to hear. You need to have that, because my main complaint, and has just been that we don't have enough real specifics about what this is. I mean, 2016, was great with the Make America Great Again and Build the Wall. 2020 has been not really quite sure exactly what the policy is, or exactly what is it you plan to do going forward, given all that's happened. He's done a lot of good things, and he has that. He can point out things that we've done and how we build on that, but you got to get to some specifics. I do want to, before we go to 2 minutes, so I listened to the Ronald Reagan Foundation has a podcast, and so it's a lot of Reagan's former speeches in the past that they put out. They did, and this last one, they basically reran the entire Mondale Reagan debate, and so I've been listening to that over the last few days, and I thought, wow, that was quite an interesting debate. I mean, we're going back in time, but it was very civil. There were Reagan and Mondale. I mean, they had their points and they had their actions and stuff like that, and then the second debate, they just all they did was make this comment, came out, I guess, on Reagan's biography, and just that, he said he was glad he didn't over prepare for the second debate. And that's why, his famous line about Mondale, about his youth and inexperience, he says that just came to him because, and all of this stuff. And that was kind of the brilliance of Reagan. But when I listen to Reagan, I just think, with all the things that go on there, he was very spot on, hit the points very well to fight back against Mondale and the criticisms, just
and happy warrior, which Trump is most of the time.
Yeah. And so it went very well. All right. So we have now headed into our last couple of minutes. What you got?
Well, a couple of things. One is the Durham. I guess there's stories out today saying that there will be no prosecutions over the unmaskings. Not terribly surprised by that. If they did prosecute them, it wouldn't be for much, right? You'd be basically a fine,
Right.
And there's no attribution on any of those stories, so you really don't know if they're true. Anyway, source close to the investigation. Investigation really hasn't leaked much in 3.5 years, but suddenly here's a leak that you can rely on. Take that for what you will. Does look like whatever he has. I guess it's been said, again, stories that are not attributed, that nothing else is going to come out before the election. But it seems to me that what may be about to come out is this, involving Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Osama bin Laden and all this kind of stuff. So that may be what we see instead of, crossfire hurricane and stuff. I think most of what is prosecutable about the FBI, DOJ, CIA handling of Crossfire Hurricane is in the public record. And so, if they choose to do something about it, voters know enough about it to react as they will. And but that's an update on that.
All right. I think I'll just say that I meant to mention this, and I didn't wrap this into that, which was that comment that Biden made when he was quizzed by that reporter about the Gallup poll that was just taken in mid-September. And it said 56% of Americans say they're better off than they were 4 years ago. 32% say they were not. What do you say about that? And he basically said, well, then I guess they shouldn't be voting for me. Yeah. But he also said they have a faulty memory. Well, the only guy with a faulty memory is Joe Biden, in my opinion, to begin with. But I mean, how
his memory works, buddy.
But I mean, if you have a campaign manager, it's like, did he just say if you think like that, you probably shouldn't be voting for me?
56% of you should vote for the opponent.
Did he just say?
I got news, buddy. You can't win if that happens.
I don't, that's just unbelievable how he does this. But that's Joe Biden, in the real. I mean, this is when he doesn't have he doesn't have a tell, but he's got to answer these questions, and he just can't handle it.
Yeah. And the other point on that is, like, all the proxy measures, right? They say, you see these polls, Biden's opened up a 12-point, 14-point lead, 72-point lead. And it's like, okay, but every other way of measuring this, if 56% are happy with what they are, if Judge Barrett is, that hurt him at first that they were going to name a justice, and not Merrick Garland this over to the next administration or whatever. But he's recovered that in the polling. That's another example. So, there's a lot of these things where they're not, things that worked against him are not going to work against him. So,
yeah,
all the guns, right? You have to get on a waiting list almost anywhere in the country now to buy a gun or to buy ammo, right? Because it's all sold, because everybody's buying them up like crazy. Those people are not voting for Biden, right? If Judge Barrett's polling in the 60s, that's bad for Biden, right? You ask people who they expect there's going to win. Trump gets about almost 70% say that they expect Trump. They expect Trump will win the election. Okay, not I will vote for him. People think about 65% of the people think their neighbor is going to vote for Trump, not them, but their neighbor. So all the proxy questions out there land on Trump's side. So polling didn't work in 2016. It really missed this. They all say, we're between a point or two of this and that and the other. You told us that this was a slam dunk for Hillary and she lost. That's what you told us, right? That's what the polling industry said. So if they say this is a slam dunk and Trump wins convincingly, which I think he will, then I think that, polling is going to have to step back and take a real look professionally at what it's doing.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention too about this Gallup thing is that when I was reading about it, it said that, this is when you compare it to other Gallup polls that were also done, at a similar time before the election, before presidential election, that they were like, 45, 48 for Obama, and then for W, much lower for HW, I guess. But Clinton. I mean, when they go back in time, the numbers were below 50. Here we've got it. At with Trump there, and with COVID and everything like this, and people are 56% of the people,
and only 32% said no. Right.
Right.
I mean, that's even a bigger problem for us.
Right. And you mentioned the gun thing, so I have that reminded me too is that and I'm just going to generalize this, that I can't remember, I think it might have been Durbin that had said this yesterday, but talking about guns, and then this big rise in gun sales and stuff like that. And I think when I was listening yesterday, one of the first thoughts that was coming to my mind was that, yeah, because people in Chicago are afraid they're going to get killed. There's violence that is uncontrolled. They are going to buy guns to protect themselves, rather than the path that he was going on about gun violence, gun control, all the nonsense that he wanted to go down. But this is how liberals just judge this thing and package all of this stuff up. It's like, gun sales are going through the roof. Well, let's take a look at the violence in Chicago and some of these cities. That's one of the main reasons they're buying this.
Yeah, why are they doing it?
Right? Yeah, and everything. All right. We have gone well past the 2 minutes, but that's fine because we're free and easy. All right. Well, everyone, thank you once again for joining us. Please always stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Never, ever, ever. God bless America, and we'll see you again next week at the same time, same place, same channel, whatever, same bat channel. For those of you that are old enough to remember that. All right. And we're off.
All right.
We'll stop the recording.